So many of you find yourselves in situations where you're wondering whether something is working for your marketing, wondering what is next. I wanted to explain how we came to a decision, how if something isn't working like you hoped, that doesn't mean you need to just stick with it. Welcome to the MediaBooks Podcast, the only place on the internet where creative accounting isn't a bad thing. Owning a virtual firm today means having a professional and modern online presence, and in this podcast, we talk about how to do just that. My name is Kristen Corey, and I'm the owner of MediaBooks, a media agency that provides creativity exclusively to accounting firms. And if you're an accounting firm owner, you're in the right place. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the MediaBooks Podcast. In this podcast episode, I'm going to be pulling back the curtain and talking about what is changing. So I have really enjoyed podcasting. I've talked about it quite a lot, that I feel like it's therapeutic, getting your thoughts out there, having sort of this conversation and kind of talking through it with you guys. But I am finding that there are limitations with how our current format is, both professionally and, to be honest, personally. It's just really hard to record any sort of content. I'm now finding having a baby here. And I mean, about a year ago, when I found out I was pregnant, I was so worried about making sure the podcast was continuing during my maternity leave, which I did, and I'm very proud of. I didn't spend a lot of time planning how to figure out the podcast once the baby's here. And so, it's been very difficult, frankly, to record while he's crying. But, we're making it work. And so, first off, I want to start, if you are new here, I used to have a podcast prior to our rebrand where I would do 20 to 30 minute podcast episodes every week. And it went really well. I enjoyed it. But a year ago, I switched to this new format of doing about 5-minute podcast episodes Monday to Friday. And I'm honestly really proud that I've kept this up. I'm really proud of the content that we were able to do. I felt like this has been fun. We've been able to discuss a lot of topics. But full disclosure, I believe one reason why I've always had good relationships with my bosses and with my clients is because I am honest, even if it doesn't paint me in the best light, or even if it's not what you want to hear. I feel like honesty just sort of cuts through a lot of sugarcoating things, and we can come to a solution more quickly if we just say how things are actually going. So that's kind of going to be sort of how the tone of this podcast goes, wanting to have full disclosure, explaining where my thinking is at, kind of the information we've collected over the last year, and then how are things that are going to change. Also, I find that this may be helpful if you are debating on doing a podcast yourself, or how you should format your own podcast. Maybe you are kind of going through your options and figuring out what works best for you and your lifestyle, what works best for your audience, how you can sort of arrange the content, pros and cons, all those different things. So first thing I want to start with is sort of the strategy behind the 5-minute episodes. And really what that was to answer people's questions without having this obligation to fill a 20-minute episode. Sometimes you do not need 20 to 30 minutes to cover a subject or answer a question, or give people sort of the answer they're looking for. And it did feel like there were times with our 20 to 30 minute episodes where we were just beating a dead horse. And I was thinking, okay, if I switch to 5 minutes, we can answer the question and you can go about your day. Marketing is definitely not the only thing you have to worry about. You have a million things to worry about. Let's just answer it and then kind of let you move on. Another part of the strategy was to have these 5-minute daily episodes, Monday through Friday, and make it a habit for people. So if we made it where it was easy for you to consume, in theory, making them short enough allowed me the ability to record the episodes and then also make sure that you have the time to listen to the episodes. And so the hope was really that it would become a habit and just part of your everyday. You sit down in the morning, you have your cup of coffee, you listen to some marketing advice, you get it done. Or you do your marketing power hour and you listen to the podcast episode, you get some inspiration, and then you go about your day. And lastly, really, I wanted to try something different. I do know a few podcasters who have this sort of format, and I really like it. It's a very simple approach. And I had always kind of been attracted to sort of the ease of having these sort of daily podcast episodes. I thought it was something interesting I wanted to, frankly, try. Now, having been through all that, I did say when I first started this is going to be a little bit of an experiment. And really, the strategy, it was fun to do, but ultimately we didn't hit the goals that we wanted to with the podcast. And so a couple reasons after some reflection and trying to figure out why this strategy didn't work. First off, while there were some questions that we wanted to answer that really only needed 5 minutes, simultaneously, there was also some questions that did need 20 to 30 minutes, or longer than 5 minutes. Podcast episodes would often go longer than I wanted. I would be watching the clock. I felt like I was talking fast. There was more I wanted to say. This also worked against my point of making it a habit. So, for example, if you like the podcast episodes because they were short, longer podcast episodes really worked against the ease that I was hoping to bring. And so it was kind of this awkward balance of figuring out, okay, do I do short podcast episodes or do I do long ones? Also, the great thing about doing so many podcast episodes is now we have a whole ton of data on what subjects you guys liked versus what you did not like. This is episode 205. It's a lot of podcast episodes to do in a whole year. And so while it gave us some really great information, unfortunately, the data also showed that for most people, it wasn't a habit. We didn't sort of see those consistent numbers and then peaks. It was more sporadic. And so trying to figure out, okay, it's not a habit, but we do know what subjects people like and what they're listening to. It was a pro, but ultimately we didn't hit that goal of wanting it to be a habit for people. And then lastly, I think we were really able to not make it, one of the reasons we couldn't make it a habit for people is because you probably didn't listen to every single episode. To be honest, we have a fairly wide range of marketing topics that we covered. If this happened often enough where there was a topic you weren't interested in, say just 2 or 3 times a week, it started breaking down on that habit that we were trying to go after. And so, for example, let's say you have a really great website up that you love and you don't need a new one. You probably really weren't interested in the web design episodes. Understandably, totally makes sense. If that subject doesn't apply to you, you're not going to listen to really that episode. And so we found all these little things that were becoming issues with making this podcast a habit. And so I wanted to kind of rethink the strategy behind the podcast, rethink what we were doing. And I wanted to change some things up. A big part of our focus moving forward is going to be on web design and how to use your website to help build your business. And so kind of considering, okay, well, how do we work this in with the podcast? That is kind of going to be the direction of the business, but how do I make sure the marketing reflects that? The marketing should follow. The marketing should not necessarily lead our business decisions. And really, it's hard to do a podcast on web design because I'll be walking you through the steps, but if you visually can't see it, especially with some technical stuff, it can be hard to explain, trying to explain what a window on your computer looks like, as opposed to just visually seeing it. So I have been wanting to take more advantage of YouTube content, having that sort of visual, which is so needed when it comes to web design. So we'll be having videos on YouTube so I can have those visual elements. Episodes are going to be now 20 to 30 minutes once a week so I can dive deeper into subjects that are, more interesting to you guys, really focus in on those topics and all that data that we got. where, it really seemed to hit home for people. And then if there are 5-minute questions, maybe we'll do like a series of quick questions, or we'll figure out how to work those quick questions into a bigger subject. So they're still answered, but not necessarily the whole focus of the podcast. And then lastly, a big part of the shift is to focus on refining our skills more. So creating daily content, you're sort of limited in how much optimization you can do, but moving slower with bigger pieces of content, we are able to focus more on optimizing our episodes with, having sponsors or more detailed show notes. And then maybe like having a guest on, once a month or something, allows us more flexibility there. And so this is all really to say, I realize a lot of this podcast episode is talking about us, what is going on behind the scenes, but in the conversations I have, whether it's with our clients or if you've done a one-on-one consultation, so many of you find yourselves in situations where you're wondering whether something is working for your marketing, wondering what is next. I wanted to explain how we came to a decision, how if something isn't working like you hoped, that doesn't mean you need to just stick with it and, for the sake of sticking with it, this doesn't mean you need to completely throw out the plan entirely either. I have a ton of data from this last year of podcasting. I consider that a win. We learned a lot, but there were some things that frankly just weren't working. And so kind of wanting to shift, I got even better behind the mic. That's another pro. I'm wanting to shift and kind of refine how to bring you this content so we can bring you even better content moving forward. Everyone likes to talk about passive income, but what about passive marketing? Specifically, lead magnets. Lead magnets are an excellent way to grow your email list. Add one to your website and watch your email list grow over time. It is set it and forget it marketing. Visit our lead magnets library where you can purchase lead magnets for everything from reading a balance sheet and income statement to sales tax 101. Add your brand colors, hit publish, watch your email list grow. Visit MediaBooksAgency.com and under our resources tab, you will find our lead magnets library where you can get started today. MediaBooks, the only place on the internet where creative accounting isn't a bad thing.